Hello everyone, I'm Zach and welcome back to another HitFilm and Blender tutorial. Today I'll be showing you how I created some of the effects in this Sub-Zero vs Scorpion fight scene, inspired by Mortal Kombat. We'll use Blender, which is free, to create a wall of ice, animate Scorpion's spear, and shatter the ice wall. I'd recommend getting familiar with Blender before following along, so be sure to check out the Blender Masterclass in the card on screen. You can find the project files for this effect in the description as well if you'd like to follow along. When recording your footage, be sure to take note of your lighting setup so you can replicate it digitally later on. The footage for this fight scene was filmed against a green screen, allowing Javert to place a digital matte painting behind the actors. If you want to pre-visualize your 3D environment while recording your video, you should check out our iOS app Camtrack AR, which was recently featured in Apple's keynote event. To learn more about digital environments using Camtrack AR and Unreal Engine, check out Javert's tutorial linked in the card on screen. Let's hop into Blender and model our 3D ice wall. The first thing we need to start this model is a nice cube. Perfect, we already have one. Scale the cube to be the size of your wall, then tab into Edit mode. I'll select the top face and scale it down so the wall gets smaller towards the top. Next I'll create the icicle, which will scatter all over this cube. In Object mode, add in a new cone object. Adjust the radius settings to make it the right shape, then go into Edit mode. Add many loop cuts to create more geometry to work with, then select two vertices. Scale them down slightly, then enable proportional editing, setting the type to random. Changing the scale and size allows you to add some variation to the shape of the icicle. Select all, then move the geometry so the origin point is towards the bottom of the object. Merge the top ring of vertices to create a point. Back in Object mode, enable smooth shading for this object. I'll hide the icicle from view, then select the cube again. To scatter icicles across the cube, I'll be using geometry nodes. Click and drag the corner of this window to add a new panel, then set the type to Geometry Node Editor. Click the New button. First, we need to scatter some points by adding a Point Distribute node. To add an icicle to every one of these points, add a Point Instance node, selecting the icicle object. Let's add some variation to this model. Add an Attribute Randomize node and set it to Vector, then type in Rotation for the attribute. Increase the max values to something like 10. I want these spikes to be generally pointing upwards, so I'll add an Align Rotation to Vector node, selecting the Z-axis. Reduce the factor setting to combine this with our randomized rotation. The icicles are looking a little stretched, so remember to apply the object scale. Add another Attribute Randomize node, this time typing in Scale. Increase the min value so that no icicles are scaled to 0. Cool! We now have a procedural ice wall. We can adjust the number of points to change the density, and can even go back and adjust the icicle model. To shatter this ice wall later on, we will have to convert it into a mesh, resulting in a huge amount of geometry. I'd recommend lowering the number of points if you find your computer can't handle it. Animating these icicles to grow into the shot required some more node work. You can see how it was set up in the downloadable project file. Let us know if you'd be interested to see a tutorial covering this in the future. I've already gone ahead and created Scorpion's chain weapon in Blender. You can download this rigged model in the video description, and I'll show you how to animate it. To bring the model into your project, go to File, Append. Navigate to the downloaded file, selecting all the objects. The chain is created along a Bezier curve, and that curve is attached to an armature, allowing the shape to be changed and animated. If the length of the curve is altered, new chain segments are automatically created to fill the curve. The armature bones have a child of constraint targeting the last bone in the chain. This essentially parents these bones to that last bone, similar to parenting layers in HitFilm. Move the chain into place by moving the armature. Don't move the other objects. By scaling that base controller along the x-axis, you can extend or retract the chain. Once your chain length is animated, animate the influence of the child of constraints. By setting these to 0, the other bones are no longer parented to the main control bone. This is helpful if you have tracked the base controller to your actor's hand and don't want the other end of the chain to follow its movement. If the chain links appear too large for your scene, scale them down in edit mode, not object mode. My chain is now in place and extending through the ice wall. To make it feel less static, I will manually animate the armature. First I'll move the camera into place, so I don't have to animate anything that won't be visible. Select the armature and go into pose mode. Select each bone, then animate their location and rotation to add more movement and interest to the chain. If you are going for realism, make sure to look at reference videos to see how a chain moves in real life. Manual animation like this can take some time and effort, but gives you full control. Simulating the chain is an option to automatically create realistic movement, but it is harder to control for a specific result. With our ice wall built and our chain animated, it's time to break the ice. The quickest and easiest way to create this shattering effect is to use Blender's Quick Explode feature. First, we have to convert our ice wall into an actual mesh, baking in the work we did with the geometry nodes. I'll save this as a separate file. Select the object, then go to Object, Apply, Make Instances Real. Press M to put these objects into their own collection. Now we can delete the original cone and cube objects. Right-click the new collection and choose Select Objects, then join them into one object with Ctrl-J. Next, we can select the area we want to shatter. In Edit mode, go into Wireframe View, then select the area using Circle Selection. Separate the selection into its own object. Go to the frame where you want the object to shatter, and select Object, Quick Effects, Quick Explode. If you hit play, your object should now shatter and fall down. Let's adjust the simulation settings to make this more interesting. Go into the particle properties and increase the velocity in the direction you want your particles to fly. If the angle seems off, make sure to apply the rotation on this object. Enable rotation and check dynamic to add some spin to the particles. If you need your particles to collide with the ground, add a new plane object. Scale it up, and select collision in the physics properties. Adjust the different values like friction to control how the particles interact with the ground. Once you are happy with your simulation, you can increase the number of particles to create more small pieces. I chose to add a solidify modifier so the shattered pieces would have some thickness. Let's make this animation look more realistic with some proper lighting and materials. I'll be rendering with cycles, as it allows for much more realistic ice or glass. If you have a fast graphics card, make sure to use it for rendering instead of your CPU. The chain object is already set up with a basic metal material, similar to the metal cyborg head in a previous video. For the ice wall, add a new material and open up the shading workspace. Delete the default principled shader and add in a glass BSDF. I'll give the glass a slight blue color, and I'll increase the roughness a little. Set the index of refraction to that of ice, which is 1.309. To make this material more interesting, I'll duplicate the glass shader and increase the roughness. Combine these two shaders with a mixed shader node. To control how they mix, add a layer weight node, plugging the Fresnel into the factor input. Now, parts of the object that are facing less directly towards the camera will be more rough. To add some detail to the ice, add a noise texture plugged into a bump node. Plug that node into the normal input of the other nodes. Now we can adjust the settings on the noise to add some small bumpy detail on the ice. To match the lighting of the surrounding video footage, I added 2 point lights, one with a blue color, and the other with an orange color. In the world settings, I use the background image as the environment texture to add some reflections. Enable transparent in the film settings so our render will have a transparent background. Also make sure to enable motion blur, as it'll make our shattering ice look much more realistic. When you are happy with how your image is looking, you can create a new folder for the image sequence and render the animation. Let's jump into HitFilm and add the finishing touches with some compositing. Here's what my ice wall render looked like on its own, and here's what it looked like after being composited. I'll break down this final composite layer by layer. At the bottom of the stack, we have the background video. Javert created this digital matte painting by compositing a stock photo in HitFilm. There's a heavy lens blur effect to make it appear out of focus, adding contrast between the foreground ice and this distant background. Next up is the actual ice wall render itself. This curves effect matches the color and contrast of the background, and this light wrap helps blend the edge between the CG render and the matte painting. A fractal noise effect was applied with the blend mode of Add, creating some small bright sparkles on the ice. To further enhance the shine and sparkle of the ice, a couple of light streaks effects were applied to a grade layer. Various stock footage elements, including fog, ash, embers, and snow, were layered together to add more movement and interest to the foreground of this composite. You can find a link in the description to where you can get your own high-quality stock footage. The radial gradient effect was applied to a grade layer to brighten up the shot with some fake lighting. A great way to tie everything together is to apply a heavy color grade. Javert used effects like curves and bleach bypass to create a high contrast stylized look. Lens blur, zoom blur, and vignette effects were all used to draw attention towards the center of the image. Some camera movement was added to this comp using the shake and lens distort effects. The shake effect was animated to enhance the intensity of the ice breaking. The lens distort effect was used not to distort the image, but to scale it up over time, creating the illusion that the camera was moving. This fake camera movement was improved further by animating the scale of the background layer, adding some parallax between the foreground and background. Chromatic aberration, lens dirt, and film grain were used to add some imperfections to the shot, increasing the realism. And that's how you can create your own Mortal Kombat Sub-Zero VFX in Blender and HitFilm. Feel free to explore the Blender project files provided in the video description, and to leave a comment if you have any questions or if you learned something new. Tune in next week for another Mortal Kombat themed effect. Subscribe for more tutorials like this and be sure to give this video a like. See you next time!